Hey, family. Another day to get better. My last video got cut off because my storage was full on my phone, so I'm going to pick up right where I left off in the last video about the basic myths about criminals. So I did make sure I went in there and deleted any videos in my storage. There's enough room to make this video. So far, based on what I've read out of this article so far, and to bring it into context with what I'm trying to inspire and motivate people about, is that we have the ability to observe our thinking, see if it's getting us where we want to go, and we have the power to change it through developing new habits, through repetition, through consistency. And based on this material here, it doesn't matter what kind of background you grew up in, what kind of neighborhood you grew up in, kind of family you grew up in, money situation. All of that we have taken on certain beliefs and certain rules and assumptions about how things are based on those experiences. We can change those. We don't have to accept them. We don't have to believe them. We can choose to believe something else, believe something more positive, believe something that's going to allow us to achieve our potential. So I'm going to pick up right where I left off reading last time. I got a couple of sentences into what I'm about to start reading before the video cut out. So in varying degrees, all human beings suffer trauma as they grew up. But if a domineering mother or an inadequate father produce delinquent children, why is it that most children who have such parents aren't criminals? Psychologists stress the importance of parents as role models, especially fathers for their sons and mothers for their daughters. Yet many children with weak or irresponsible role models become honest, productive adults. Conversely, some children with strong, positive role models become criminals. When they are interviewed after being apprehended, criminals invariably relate a tale of horrors about their early lives. They seize upon any hardships in their lives, real or made up, to justify their acts against society. By portraying themselves as victims, they seek sympathy and hope to absolve themselves of culpability. Some of society's chronic lawbreakers do come from volatile, conflict-ridden families where they have suffered abuse. But that is likely to be only part of the story. In their accounts, they relate only what others did to them, omitting what they did to make a bad situation even worse. A man may describe savage beatings by a maniacal father, but he never tells what he did to provoke such treatment. He conceals the fact that he taunted, deceived, and defied his parents to the point that this frustrated father finally lashed out at him physically. A complete account might reveal that the criminal was the only child in the family to have received severe corporal punishment, whereas his siblings were generally well behaved. This is not to defend harshness in discipline. It is, however, to suggest that we ought not to limit our inquiries to what parents have done to children, but strive to determine what children have done to their parents. A related point is that probably most children who are mistreated suffer long-range effects, but not all are criminals. Criminals contend that their parents did not understand them and failed to communicate with them. They are often believed, and as usual, the deficiency is attributed almost entirely to parents. If we could be invisible observers in the homes of delinquent Okay, so if we could be invisible observers in the homes of delinquent youngsters, we might reach a different conclusion. As a child, the criminal shuts his parents out of his life because he doesn't want them or anyone else to know what he is up to. When a teenager skips school, hangs out with at a pool hall, joyrides, drinks, smokes pot, and steals from stores, it should be no surprise that he tells his parents little about his day. In fact, he will greet parental interest and concern with accusations that the parent is prying into his business. No matter how hard they try, mothers and fathers cannot penetrate the secrecy, and they discover that they do not know their own child. He is the kid who remains the family mystery. In short, psychological theory in its current state is more misleading than illuminating in explaining why people become criminals. Far from being a formless lump of clay, the criminal shapes others more than they do him. During the 19th century, there was a belief among many experts that people were born criminals. Attempts to identify criminals on the basis of facial or other physical features were discredited. However, the bad seed hypothesis never died. In the 1960s, for example, a controversy arose over whether criminals have special chromosome patterns. Evidence for the XYY syndrome or other chromosome anomaly remains inconclusive. Another belief is that perhaps criminals suffer from a psychological dysfunction that may be hereditary or result from trauma. Brain lesions or tumors, temporal lobe epilepsy, blood chemistry changes, glandular abnormality, and hypoglycemia are among the organic factors that have been linked to criminality, but conclusive evidence of such a linkage is still lacking. Of the many people who are afflicted with these conditions, few become criminals. There has also been a theory that criminals are inherently less intelligent than the general population, but this has been laid to rest. Empirical studies of criminals and non-criminals simply did not support such a proposition. Criminals may score low on IQ tests and lack basic information that most people acquire in the primary grades of school. However, their mental acumen and resourcefulness are striking to anyone who is privy to their complex, well thought out schemes. Criminals are remarkable in their capacity to size up their environment in order to pursue objectives important to them. Still, the belief lingers, especially among some educators, that criminals have organically based learning disability. Experts point out that many delinquent youngsters seem unable to learn and fall far behind academically. They also observe that among prison inmates, there is a sizable number who can neither read nor write. Another deficiency noted is that criminals do not seem to learn from past experiences the way most people do. There are several problems with the learning disability theory. Many criminals who appear learning disabled are highly capable of learning but simply chose not to because school was incompatible with what they want to do. Furthermore, most children who are generally disabled in their capacity to learn, while experiencing blows to their self-esteem and severe frustration, don't react to their difficulties by becoming criminals. The observation that criminals have incapacity to learn from experience is inaccurate. They may not learn what parents and teachers want them to learn, but they do utilize the past as a guide when it matters to them. They learn how to become more successful criminals. No factor or set of factors, sociological, psychological, or biological, is sufficient to explain why a person becomes a criminal. So far, the search to pin down causation has been futile. Far more disturbing is that programs, laws, policies, and decisions about how to deal with criminals have been based upon these theories, and this has resulted in a tremendous waste of resources while crime continues in epidemic proportions. What is clear is that criminals come from a wide variety of backgrounds, from the inner city, suburbia, rural areas, and small towns, and from any religious, racial, or ethnic group. They may grow up in closely knit families, broken homes, or orphanages. They may be grade school dropouts or college graduates, unemployed drifters, or corporate executives. In most cases, they have brothers, sisters, and next door neighbors who grew up under similar circumstances but did not become criminals. Despite a multitude of differences in their backgrounds and crime patterns, criminals are alike in one way: how they think. A gun-toting, uneducated criminal off the streets of Southeast Washington, D.C., and a crooked Georgetown business executive are extremely similar in their view of themselves and the world. This is not to deny individual differences among criminals in their aesthetic tastes, sexual practices, religious observance, or favorite sports team, but all regard the world as a chessboard over which they have total control, and they perceive people as pawns to be pushed around at will. Trust, love, loyalty, and teamwork are incompatible with their way of life. They scorn and exploit most people who some typos. They scorn and exploit most people who are kind, trusting, hardworking, and honest. Toward a few, they are sentimental but rarely considerate. Some of their most altruistic acts have sinister motives. More than a half a century ago, the noted psychologist Alfred Adler observed, "With criminals, it is different. They have a private logic, a private intelligence. They are suffering from a wrong outlook upon the world, a wrong estimate of their own importance and the importance of other people." Adler went on to say that the criminal's crimes fit in with his general conception of life. Implied throughout Adler's writings is the idea that people choose to be criminals, that they are a different breed. Even in 1930, Adler's was a lone voice. Psychology and sociology long have advanced the view that the criminal is basically like everyone else but has turned antisocial because he has been blocked by others in fulfilling his aspirations. Thus, the criminal is perceived as a victim of forces and circumstances beyond his control. Those who hold such a view go a step further, asserting that we are all, in a sense, criminals because we lie, lust, and yield to temptation. But it is absurd to equate the white lie of the responsible person with the gigantic network of lies of the criminal. It is equally absurd to equate a child's pilferage of a candy bar with a delinquent's stealing practically everything that isn't nailed down. At some point, we and the criminal are very different. He is far more extreme in that crime is a way of life, not an occasional aberration. He is far more extreme in the crime is that crime is a way of life, not an occasional aberration. That was typed twice. It is misleading to claim that the criminal wants what the responsible person wants, that he values the same things that responsible person values. Both may desire wealth, but only one will work steadily and earnestly to acquire it and then use it responsibly. The criminal believes that he is entitled to it and grabs it any way he can, not caring who he injures, and then thirsts for more. Both may desire a family life, but the responsible person shows the give and take, the empathy, and the selflessness that family life requires. The criminal pays lip service to love while demanding that his spouse and children place his demands and wishes first. By taking the position that the criminal is a victim, society has provided him with excuses for crime and thereby supported his contention that he is not to blame. Partly to atone for its alleged injustices to the criminal, society has offered him countless opportunities to rehabilitate himself and enter the mainstream. Surprise has given way to despair as the criminal rejects the very opportunities that he rejected before: work, school, counseling, or else shamelessly exploits them while continuing to commit crimes. Attempts to improve the environment, no matter how worthwhile, have not altered the criminal's personality. Psychological methods have been equally unsuccessful because therapists have mistakenly utilized concepts and techniques suited to patients with a very different character structure. Excuse me. In the more distant past, castration, lobotomy, and drugs were employed in hopes of altering biological forces within the criminal, but to little availability. The death knell of rehabilitation having sounded, the pendulum is swinging the other way to lock 'em up and throw away the key. Given the high recidivism rate of criminals, which means they get out and return back to custody over and over, so recidivism rate of criminals who were considered rehabilitated, such a sentiment is understandable. What about the function of punishment? Arrest alone or confinement undoubtedly deters some offenders, but contact with the criminal justice system has little lasting impact on habitual offenders. Warehousing a criminal in an institution gets him off the streets for a while, but one day he will be released to wreak havoc again in society. Because prison is expensive, costing the taxpayer more than a year's tuition at an Ivy League college, and because many prisons are dehumanizing, alternatives to incarceration are being developed. In this effort, rehabilitative proposals are once again being heard, but the term is not being used. Instead, it is community-based corrections, which features a smorgasbord of offerings: vocational training, schooling, counseling, psychotherapy, as well as accountability to a probation officer. In addition, restitution and community service programs have proliferated as society considers finally not just criminals, but people who are truly victims. The more things change, the more they stay the same. The criminal's motivation is to avoid confinement. He sees his probation officer once every couple of weeks for a brief appointment. He may attend some programs if they are mandated by the court, and he may make restitution, but his personality does not change. And so the criminal comes up against a world that either bleeds for him because he is a victim or else wants to remove him from the earth. Criminals have been imprisoned, educated, counseled, preached to, and even executed. But the policies and programs continue to be ineffective, largely because those conceiving and implementing them do not know with whom they are dealing. Decisions are made on the basis of misconceptions in an atmosphere of do something now and do it fast. A surprising number of people who deal with criminals do not know how criminals think. How a person behaves is determined largely by how he thinks. See, how a person behaves is determined largely by how he thinks. Criminals aside, that's all humans. Our behavior is determined largely by how we think. Criminals think differently. If we are thoroughly familiar with how they think, we are in a far better position to draft legislation, formulate policies, administer programs, render more informed decisions, and be more effective in the direct contacts and criminals both and be more effective in direct contact with criminals, both in the institutions and in the community. There is even a ray of hope that we can help criminals change and become responsible citizens. But to undertake this task, we must see the criminal as the problem, not society. Our approach to change must be to help the criminal radically alter his self-concept and his view of the world. Some criminals can be habilitated, that is, helped to acquire patterns of thinking that are totally foreign to them, but essential if they are to live responsibly. Wow, some criminals can be habilitated. That is, helped to acquire patterns of thinking that are totally foreign to them, but essential if they are to live responsibly. And that wraps that up, guys. I know it was out of the norm for what my videos are about, but it was with the materials that I received as part of the Challenge Incarceration program when I was in prison and I was called a criminal. So maybe that last part works, maybe. But helping criminals acquire patterns of thinking that are totally foreign to them, but essential if they are to live responsibly. So yeah, I hope you guys got something out of that. A different perspective, maybe some eye-opening moments, maybe condemned. And not condemned, but whatever it is. I'm tired, and reading a little bit about how my past used to be is kind of what it is. But on to the last part of my videos and read the nightly journal entry in my journal that I had to write as part of that program for 6 months. And I believe I am on the 3rd. Yes. November 3rd of 2011. What was positive and what was negative about today? The positive in my day were the information I received from the Equal Opportunity Center on Financial Aid for College. A woman came in from Eau Claire and explained the FAFSA process. The negative today was an inmate was kicked out of the program only 1 week before his graduation. What were the main feelings I experienced today? I am feeling confidence and hopeful because of self-worth I am developing in Challenge Incarceration program and the outlook on my opportunities to go to college and start to recreate my new way of living. What helped me make it through the day? Faith in Jesus, effort in the program, and hope for the future. What did I learn today? November 3rd of 1964, Washington, D.C. cast its first presidential vote. Washington, D.C. was named after President Washington. I don't get that, how Washington, D.C. cast its first presidential vote. November 3rd of 1964? Okay. But anyway, that's that journal reading, and that was my video on the basic myths about criminals. And my final one on there, I don't know what other information is going to come out of these folders over here. I just get in there, I randomly grab out a stack, and then I'll try and sort that stack into the same subject material and then go through it and then do the same thing. But hey, keep pushing forward. Never give up. Just because we've been a certain way our whole life does not mean we have to continue to be that way. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.